With Canon releasing so many firmware updates for the EOS R and RP, it got me to thinking, should I upgrade my firmware? Hey guys, what's going on? Myles here with another photography video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about firmware updates and should you upgrade your camera or should you wait? Now, before we dive into this video, if you haven't not done so already, smash that subscribe button down below and make sure to click that notification bell so you never miss another one of my videos. Alrighty guys, let's dive in and check out if you should or should not upgrade your camera's firmware. Alrighty guys, so starting off, there are a few things you want to think about before ever upgrading your camera's firmware. Now the first thing you want to think about is what does this software do and do you really need it on your camera? Now for those of you who do not know this, I also work as a software developer, so I do have lots of knowledge on pushing out updates to customers. I have lots of experience in this field, and I can tell you that you always want to read the release notes before ever upgrading your camera's firmware. This will tell you whether or not you need the firmware on your camera. In addition, not all firmware is needed. I can tell you that sometimes updates can actually cause more harm than good, so you want to make sure you fully understand what this software will be doing before ever putting it on your camera. Now the second thing you want to think about is how long has this software been out on the market. Now if you are like me, you are super eager to try out any new software as soon as it gets released. Now I can tell you from experience that if you rely on your camera or you have an upcoming shoot, you may want to hold off a few weeks until you can read up on online forums and articles. You want to make sure you fully understand the software update, and you want to make sure that there are no new bugs being released with the software. A lot of times what can happen is they fix one bug and it causes another. Sometimes during their testing, these bugs don't come out and their testers don't find them, and it's not till it actually gets out into the real world that people start finding defects. The last thing you want to do is, put a new firmware on right before a shoot only to find that it breaks one of the features you rely on. Especially if you use your camera for money, this could be really, really bad. I've been there, I've seen this happen, and as a software developer, I can tell you that not all software is perfect, and a lot of times bugs do go out the door. So always read up on the firmware update, whether it be an online forum, an article, a YouTube video. Make sure you fully understand what this firmware will do to your camera and how it's going to affect you. Now the third and final thing you want to think about before upgrading your firmware is, do you know how to upgrade your camera correctly? Now I know what you're thinking. How hard can a firmware update be to install? Well, I can tell you from personal experience that some camera companies have funny methods you need to follow step by step in order to install this firmware correctly. Not all cameras are made equal, and one camera may be easier to install than others. You want to make sure you fully understand how you are going to install the firmware, whether it be an online video or maybe consulting your owner's manual or the release notes. A lot of times will have how to install the firmware. You want to make sure you fully understand how to actually install the firmware. Again, Canon has a funky way of installing it. You need to put it on a memory card, then go into the camera setting and then install it, where there are some other cameras on the market that you just directly hook up to the Wi-Fi and press install and you're good to go. Some cameras need memory cards in them, some do not. You want to make sure you fully understand how to install the firmware and what steps you need to take in order to get it onto your camera correctly. Now, one final note is you always want to make sure you have an empty memory card in your camera. Now, if you have a memory card currently in your camera with photos on it, I suggest always backing those photos up before ever installing a firmware. Sometimes firmwares will erase the memory card or could accidentally corrupt the card. And the last thing you want is you to lose photos because you didn't use a blank card when you started the firmware update. So always make sure whatever you're doing, back up the photos, format the memory card using the camera, and then start the firmware update. Even if the instructions don't tell you to do that, I can tell you from experience and as a software developer that taking things out of the equation is always better than adding more things into the equation, especially when you're upgrading firmware. Again, not everything is tested, and the last thing you want is something to happen while you are installing the firmware on your precious camera. Alrighty guys, so there you have it. There are my 3 tips on things you want to think about before ever installing that software on your camera. Now remember, as always, if you like these videos and you want to see more, smash that subscribe button down below and make sure to click on that notification bell so you never miss another one of my videos. Alrighty guys, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace!